again on a Tuesday evening. It is Tuesday, July the 5th, about 7 p.m. And of course, I'm Rex Moncrief, and well, we've got a man down this evening. Duke Lowry is not here. I repeat, he is not here. In all seriousness, he's been feeling, I guess, a little under the weather and had some other stuff to try to get accomplished today and wasn't able to make the show, but hopefully he'll be doing better next week, and we'll be back in the navigator's chair over there. And so that's going to probably run the show a little bit shorter this evening. I'm probably not going to do a marathon show tonight by myself, but we do have a few things to talk about, especially concerning the city council meeting this afternoon. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a relatively boring city council meeting, and I'd even thought about doing a quick pre-recorded show and just pushing that out there, and Duke and I come back and do a live show next week. But I got to watching that city council meeting, and there were some very interesting things brought up, including some really good topics or points about the memorandum of understanding with the Jimmy Davis Bridge situation, and gerrymandering was brought up during the meeting today, so that's pretty interesting. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do our standard countdown. Again, for those of you that are new, we got about 30 people watching at the moment, but for those of you that are new, countdown's about 2.5 minutes or so, maybe 3 minutes, and that allows me to get a few things organized here, allows y'all to grab some popcorn and a drink, tag some friends, share this out on your pages, and we will be back. Hello there, Terry Norris. And again, if you're just tuning in, we do have a man down this evening. Duke is not in the navigator saddle tonight. We'll talk about that some more here in about 2.5 or 3 minutes as we get back. Live broadcast is brought to you by Eagle Truck Center, soaring to new heights. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. and the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out for Bossier. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. Okay, and so I successfully made it through a countdown all by my lonesome tonight. Howdy, folks. Glad to see all of y'all watching. We've got, how many people do we have? We've got about 40 plus people, 45 people watching right now. That's awesome. Hello there, Mr. Bobby Key. How are you doing tonight? Hello, Cindy, and of course, Terry Norris. And hey, y'all let me know. Make sure my audio sounds good. It was a little flustered last week. I think I've addressed the problem. But anyway, I need to make sure that my audio sounds good, so y'all make sure y'all can hear me and let me know in the commentary. We've got a few things to discuss tonight. I'm going to check on my phone and make sure that everything looks good so far. All right, so I've got a couple of topics here, most of it centering around the city council meeting. So apparently, the former city council president from the past 12 months has got a new nickname. And did any of y'all actually watch the city council meeting today? I mean, like I was saying right before we went to the countdown and all that, I thought it was going to be pretty boring, but actually, it turned out to have some interesting information. And I'm not going to say accusations, but kind of some accusations going on there. But let's get to Bubba Don Williams. So let me change screens here. So we've got several things to do. Let me flip screens, and I'm kind of trying to do most of this solo this evening. So let me flip over to here. Okay. So we'll go ahead and we're going to try to get started here, not with that screen. Hold on. We're going to try to get started with this screen right here. And I want y'all to listen to this. So the setup for this is towards the beginning of the meeting. The timelines that you'll see don't necessarily correlate to the exact timeline on their YouTube stream. But apparently they were giving Bubba Don an award, plaque deal, or whatever for his tenure as president of the city council. Mr. Darby is now the current president, by the way. And so anyway, as they're going through this, David gets up there, King David does, and I want y'all to listen to this for a second. It's kind of hilarious.
What's really unusual is the name. It says, the Honorable Don Bubble Williams, outstanding leadership as president of the Bossier City Council, July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. So I didn't know if you knew what that new nickname is instead of, I didn't know if that was part of the recall effort or what, but anyway.
So, apparently, instead of referring to Don Williams as Bubba Don, he's now known as Bubble. That's like officially there. As a matter of fact, towards the end of that, they said, well, we may just leave that on the plaque instead of trying to correct it. So now Bubba Don is now affectionately known as Bubble anytime that he casts the vote. So the meeting kind of started off with that, and then we got into Gary Joyner, who is the consultant for the redistricting. Gary actually lives over in Shreveport, but apparently does lots of consulting for this type of thing. And he got up to address some questions from Lee Jeter. And as you know, I think Lee is he the president of the Bossier chapter of the NAACP. Lee is also on the Democratic PEC over here as well. And so apparently the NAACP at the meeting prior had presented the city council members with a list of questions, or Lee had done it, whatever. And so Gary's addressing these questions. And this is concerning redistricting for the city council districts. And apparently the NAACP is not happy about it. And it sounds to me, now y'all can listen to this, and as soon as we get a copy of the questions from the city council, we'll post those as well. But y'all can listen to this. It sounds to me like the NAACP is wanting to do some gerrymandering. Now, for those of you that don't know what gerrymandering is, it's basically think of a congressional district or some sort of voting district, and let's say that voting district is shaped like a circle, okay? And inside that circle, everybody votes for a particular elected official. Well, gerrymandering would be like that circle being made of silly putty, and you taking it and stretching it out and stretching out the other side and stretching this little piece over here to grab these people way over here on the outside of the circle. So that's gerrymandering, which is, for the most part, at least for racial reasons, it's a no-no, and we'll talk about that with the Supreme Court. But let's listen to what Gary Joyner has to say. So I'm going to kind of play this and stop and start it. And of course, I would like to get plenty of feedback in the commentary, because that gives me more to actually talk about and address. So anyway, y'all listen up and let's discuss this.
At the last meeting, we had questions by the
Sir, would
Bossier.
you, for the record, state your full name,
Oh.
address, and your
Gary Dillard
affiliation?
Joyner. I reside at 429 Dunmoreland Circle in Shreveport, Louisiana, 71106. I am the consultant for the city of Bossier on redistricting. At the last meeting, the Bossier NAACP provided each of you with a letter or a list of questions. And you're going to have written responses that I will give to the clerk, but I want to go through these and explain what they are. I'm just going to do a verbal a narrative on it. The first was, under the new proposed plan, 3 of the 5 districts would decrease minority black population. That dilutes the voting strength of the minority black population in those 3 districts. Have you prepared a plan that does not decrease percentage of minority black population in these 3 districts? If so, when can the public view them? In fact, that doesn't exist. There is no what's called retrogression, and I will talk about that in the second one.
All right, so let's stop for a second. So if you don't know, retrogression is, by definition, the process of returning to an earlier state, typically a worse state. So what Gary is referring to here is that they're not going to retrograde any of the districts, which would put them to a apparently a more diluted state in Gary's opinion. And he's doing this based on the demographics. I don't have the demographics in front of me and all that sort of thing. So my commentary in this tonight is going to be based on the fact that what Gary is saying is true in the numbers. All right, so here we go.
There is no retrogression in this plan. It's designed specifically not to be retrogressive. The second was, what is the retrogressive plan? There's not one. Since the minority black population will decrease in the proposed plan in most of the new districts, will that open the plan to questions by the Department of Justice as a retrogressive plan? Number one, I'll do it backwards. No. Anybody can make comments or have questions about something, but retrogression in its simplest form is this. If you have a district that's a minority majority and suddenly it is not, that is retrogression.
All right, so I'm going to stop there because that's an important point as well. And again, it goes back to the definition of retrogression, which is returning to an earlier state, typically worse off. And in the case of race-based things in politics, that would be, again, like Gary said, you had a district that was majority minority, so majority black, Latino, etc. And then all of a sudden, it went from, I'm just picking numbers, but it went from 55% majority black to 40% black. In other words, just completely swap places. So that would be a no-no, and it's not going to happen. So anyway, let's keep listening.
Period. That's the simplest way to say it. It does not happen. I did an analysis of every census block in Bossier City according to the 2020 census. I mapped them. I can show, and y'all received this. You've got the PDFs that show it, and it just does not exist. In a 5-member plan, you're going to have one district that is very strong and one district that supports it. when you try to do a 7-member district, you get one black district and one that is influenced. You cannot build 2 black districts using any normal formula other than gerrymandering.
All right, so I'm going to stop it right there as well. And let me see if I can add something up on the screen right here real quick. So, Bossier City is about, according to the U.S. Census, I looked it up before the show and all that. According to the U.S. Census, it's about 28% black. All right. And in a 5-district plan,
And we don't do that. That's
whoops,
a bad word.
let me pause this. All right. So in a 5-district plan, let me get this going on the screen right here. Districts times 1.28 equals 1.4. Okay. So to me, it's pretty simple math. Now, this is not what Gary is saying. This is Rex's math right here, but it's pretty simple math. And I think I spelled everything right. I'm doing this on the fly. So if there are 5 districts and Bossier City is about 28% black, not just minority, but 28% black, then that would give about a 1.4 district that should be black. Well, you can't have a 4/10 of a district, and as we all know from basic elementary school math, we round down, so that would basically give one district that should be primarily black or predominantly black represented, and then another district or parts of other districts that would have a heavy black influence, but not necessarily majority minority. Okay, so it's pretty simple math. All right, but let's continue on.
Under the old plan and the new proposed plan, District 1, where I live, this is Mr. Jeter, Lee Jeter, who wrote this, has considerably more population than any other district. This dilutes the vote of all of the population of District 1, not just minority black population. Why would you leave District 1 so much larger than the others? What can be done to bring the size of District 1 closer to the size of the other districts? The growth in Bossier City, with the exception of new subdivisions, which is primarily in the north, is in the south. It's geographically more compact. The other problem with that is that you don't have any room to grow unless the city annexes expands, period. So when you look at the southernmost district, it is what it is. The only way it can come into sync, if you will, with the others, it's still within plus or minus 5 percentage points. It is perfectly legal, is to compact it to the south. That only works so far, and not.
I'm going to pause right there, and I think what he's referring to here is, of course, we all know the growth in the north side of Bossier with all the subdivisions going in and all that, but that is spreading out geographically also. South Bossier is not really spreading any further. It's pretty much kind of at its boundaries, but there is growth there, and so the population is getting more dense. Even though we have population growth in the north, it's not quite as dense because it's spread amongst all the new subdivisions going there. So trying to give you kind of, Rex's view and definition of what Gary's talking about while watching this on the fly. So, all right, here we go.
Enough to make a difference. As long as the entire plan is within a 10% deviation of plus 5% or minus 5%. In any, down to 1/100th of a percent, it'll be fine. And that's what we did. Can we see an interactive plan or map that moves the lines for District 3 to include all of Sun City and all of Savannah Place in District 3 rather than District 1? What chance would that make to the overall population, and would that make District 1 and District 3 more balanced in size? Okay, I received from your engineering department a GIS, Geographic Information System, shapefile of all of your subdivision filings from the beginning. And about 1,200 of these. I reduced those to commonality. So if it's a specific subdivision, all the filings will then have one common boundary. So that 1,200 has now been reduced to 182, and I'm going to send it to engineering this afternoon or in the morning.
All right, so I'm going to pause there. Let me see if I can bring up the maps here and show you. Let's get this going here. Here we go. All right, so this is the map he's talking about. And yes, I know it's, not easy to see, especially if you're watching on mobile. So let me zoom in here a little bit. So this is what he's talking about, is down here in South Bossier, and you can see the green area. That's District 1. The kind of reddish area here is District 2, and then District 3. And then, of course, here's District 4 going up around Hazel Jones Road, et cetera, and on up into the North 220 in my area and all that. And then District 5 is going to be over here, which is between 20 and 220 and Benton Road and that area there. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a reference as to what he's talking about. This is in the City Council agenda for today's meeting. If you want to go pull that PDF down, and I'll try to remember to also post this on the Bossier Watch page after the show, just to kind of give you a little bit of a reference marker. David Jones says, would be affected by running pipe southward. Growth controlled by pipe. Now, I'll assume, David, that you're talking about water and sewage pipe. Is that basically correct? And let's see, Miss Janice Key says, hi, guys. Y'all are Cronkite and Wallace, not to be confused with George. Well, thank you for that comment. Good to see y'all watching this evening. All right. So let me flip back over, and we will kind of continue on there with Mr. Joyner. Just flip back over here. All right, here we go.
If we put all of Sun City and Savannah Place into District 3, remove them from District 1, District 1 goes down to around minus 15%. Remember that you can't go more than minus 5. All right. If you keep those two neighborhoods together, they adjoin. They're also compact, and they go basically from two sets of census block lines, one of which is the Federal Highway. The other is Teague Parkway. If you keep them together, you go as far as you can on the east side, Parksdale on the north. The only way to connect those two specific subdivisions, neighborhoods in this case, is to run between the west pavement of Teague Parkway and the river and go north about 1.5 miles and then pick up population. And that's gerrymandering in any recognized form. It's a tendril.
All right, now, so I want you to pay attention to what he just mentioned, gerrymandering again. And he mentioned it in the context of the NAACP, Lee Jeter's suggestion. I would really like, Lee, I know that you watch the show and I got your phone number. I can text you. We may try to get you on next week or the week after. I would really like to get Lee's response to that, because if you read between the lines there, he basically just accused the NAACP of trying to gerrymander the districts. Now, I want to read to you here that SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, has affirmed in Miller v. Johnson in 95 that racial gerrymandering, of course, is a violation of constitutional rights, and has upheld decisions against redistricting that is purposely devised based on race. Hey, Charlie and Judy, glad to see y'all tonight. Again, for everybody that's just tuning in, Duke is missing in action tonight. Well, he's not really missing in action. He's feeling under the weather and got a lot of stuff going on, and so he's actually out this week. So we'll wish him well and hopefully see him next week. All right, SCOTUS has also struggled with gerrymandering based on partisanship, if I can talk this evening. And there was a landmark decision, which was Rucho versus Common Cause in 2019, that ultimately decided, now this is according to SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, ultimately decided that questions of partisan gerrymandering represent a non-justiciable political question which cannot be dealt with by the federal court system. That decision leaves it to the states and Congress to decide if gerrymandering attempts are based solely on politics. Republican, Democrat, I really doubt that they gerrymander for independents, but let's say independents too. So that is actually up to the states and to Congress itself. And I didn't look up to see if there are any federal statutes against gerrymandering based on politics, but it is absolutely against the Constitution to do gerrymandering on a racial basis. We pretty much all know that. So it's kind of interesting that Gary, refers to gerrymandering more than once, and then does it here in the context of the NAACP's request about what would happen if you moved these two areas into this district. So very, very interesting language there.
And on the north end, it would reduce the number of available blocks in which commonly we refer to as Old Bossier, the original town of Bossier. It would then be artificially connected down to 3. And that's another reason. It's combining parts of a traditional neighborhood, fragmenting it, and putting it with 2 much later subdivisions. So there is only one way to do it, and it's really not ethically correct to do it.
Notice there he says it's really not ethically correct to do it. And I also want to point out, too, and again, full disclosure, I'm no lawyer and certainly not a Supreme Court lawyer. But SCOTUS did also determine in Shaw versus Reno that relying on race in redistricting, quote, reinforces racial stereotypes and threatens to undermine our system of representative democracy by signaling to elected officials that they represent a particular racial group rather than their constituency as a whole. That's important. Again, according to SCOTUS, it reinforces racial stereotypes if you rely on redistricting solely on race. So you don't want to rely on redistricting just for political purposes, but that's up to the states and Congress. But if you're doing it strictly for racial stereotyping, well, that's not right either. So, very interesting points here. All right, let's finish up here with Mr. Joyner.
Were there other plans presented for the 5 districts other than the one submitted? Shouldn't voters have an opportunity to review those plans and select from those plans options? Well, in building this particular plan, every time an attempt was made by me and it did not work, meaning that it either fractured communities of commonality, people of commonality, I just simply incorporated it into the plan, which became Plan 2, which is perfectly fine. Otherwise, we would have had about 10 what-ifs, and none of them would be votable. So the answer to that is no, this is fine. As far as having maps that you could look at, I created PDF files for everybody's districts, and they were given to the clerk. Y'all have seen them. They've been up on the website. So yes, we've met that. And then the last thing was, did Mr. Joyner prepare other plans and maps for the council to review? The reason that we did it the way I did it was to make sure that we had one that would work before having any what-ifs. And they're all work product anyway. They're not votable plans. So, and I'll provide a written answer to this as well. So, any questions for me?
Gary, I appreciate you. I know you put a lot of time in this year to doing that, and
Thank you.
a lot of work.
My pleasure. I appreciate it.
Okay, so translation. The maps are available. They've been available. They're on the website. They've had, I don't know, 2 or 3 public meetings now about this. And, of course, they've discussed this more than once at the city council. And, the public is invited to make their commentary then as well. So, it goes back to the shot of the crowd back there. There's, 4 or 5 people. you know. And look, in full disclosure again, I wasn't there and Duke wasn't there today either, but, you know, at least we try to watch the city council meetings and do our commentary and reporting on this. But if you got a problem with how the redistricting plans are being done or talked about, or if you have some concerns, you need to be talking to your city councilman for your district, either of the two city councilmen at large, and or being at these meetings. And I don't know. Again, I'm no expert in all this. I don't know all the demographics of Bossier City, but it sounds to me like the NAACP is just, I don't know, trying to stir the pot a little bit. I don't think that Gary is trying to do any gerrymandering based on racial bias. I don't know him, never met him, but that's just my opinion after watching this. Okay, so any questions or commentary on this part of the show? David Jones says ethically was a very interesting word choice, means right and good. Let's see. And Laura Embry Rexford says, David Womack, I think it's Joyner spelled Joiner. I think you are correct, Laura, and I may have it wrong in my notes as well. I was kind of in a hurry, so forgive me if I had it misspelled. And Brandy Jones Faulting says he is being really choosy with his words, all while being candid. I like it. Same sense that I got from that. So it's pretty important, folks, for all of us to keep up with what's going on with the redistricting, because it does matter in who your city councilman is. At least in this case, there's also redistricting going on at the state level and all that too. So it is very important. All right. So we've covered, let me get my little check marks going here. So for those of you that missed, it is no longer Bubba Don Williams. It is Bubble Don Williams. We've also talked about, well, retrogressing and retrogression. And, I don't know, just sounded to me like the NAACP was trying to get involved in some gerrymandering there. Lee, come on the show and prove me wrong. You know, tell us where we're going wrong, or tell us where Gary's going wrong if he is. And that brings us to the next point. And interesting, glad to have Mr. David Jones in the commentary, watching the show. I should have had you call in this evening, David. I should have thought of that. But anyway, so I want to move on to the next part, which is former city councilman David Jones discussing the memorandum of understanding with Bossier City and the other entities involving the Jimmy Davis Bridge, which of course we've talked about on multiple shows now. And I got to give David credit. He brought up some really good points on this. So we're going to kind of go down them one by one. And David, I would appreciate any commentary you want to give. Just burn up the keyboard with that, and I'll be glad to put them on the screen. So let's start off. And David reminds us about something here concerning the stop and start of fixing the Jimmy Davis Bridge. So here we go.
I'm going to try to keep this to 3 minutes. I've asked for a little bit of leeway if it goes 4, please.
Oh, by the way, David, I think you actually went, let's see, you actually went 12 and a half minutes, not 4, but that's okay.
But we've tried this a long time, about 25, 30 years to be exact. And the first answer was, you're not going to have more bridges than they have in Baton Rouge crossing the river. That was the first thing. And after we heard that, until that really got so boring, then all of a sudden it was some kind of barn swallows. Well, all of a sudden the birds are gone now, so the birds don't matter anymore.
So I want to pause right there. What did happen to the barn swallow issue? Because that was a huge deal. I mean, we had the bats over at the baseball stadium in Shreveport, and we had the barn swallows at the Jimmy Davis Bridge, which basically stopped much needed repairs and maintenance, or some of it, and pretty much stopped the discussion of tearing down the Jimmy Davis Bridge to build a new one because of these blasted birds. Did they just leave? What actually happened to them? And David, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you tell me, or didn't you say at one point, I think you did on the show or commented in the show, that the state was paying some guys to sit there and, was it count the number of birds or shoot firecrackers at them? I don't know, something crazy like that. So, David, refresh my memory on what that situation was. All right, so let's continue on.
So now it's historic, which I had to call a senator's hand and go, no, it's not historic. Jimmy Davis sold his farm and his friend's farm to the state when there was nothing down there and no reason to have a bridge, and that's the history of the bridge. So that's gone. And then your money was moved, that Mayor Chandler was promised early on, was moved to the I-49 corridor. So whether you get it or not, they don't want you to have the bridge. So now the new is, if you'll just please take our junk, we'll give you what's yours anyway.
All right, so I'm going to stop right there. So David says 1 year with lasers. I forgot it was lasers. Okay. Thank you, David. Greg Bell also says the Barn Swallows leave. Here where he's at, they left last weekend and will be back again next year. And our good friend Barry Butler says they are not endangered. All right. So I got a question, though, because David brings up a point. They don't want us to have the bridge. Well, that may be true. But why is it true? I mean, I understand that, they want to divert the money to the projects, south of Lafayette and all that. I get that. But why would they not want that bridge replaced? Because if something catastrophic happens, and we've seen bridges collapse, let's face it, wasn't it I-40 over the Mississippi River or whatever that collapsed? Was it I-40? Trying to remember. Just a handful of years ago. I mean, do they want something catastrophic like that to happen? Why don't they want us to have this bridge? I mean, what's going on there? What's the reason why? But in the meantime, let's listen to some other good reasoning that David has.
And if anybody that stands right here has told you your only responsibility is going to be a few trash bags, they also need to tell you where to put the corral for the unicorns, because that ain't going to happen.
And I got to say, I didn't even think about us having unicorns along with the bungee jumping and everything else and the jet ski rental and all that. So, David, the one thing, though, is you should have mentioned bungee jumping. You just should have mentioned it. All right, so let's continue on.
And you and I both know it. That isn't how it works. No, but they say, take it from us, trust us, and we'll work out whatever you need later. We know how that works, too, because it took us 5 years after we were promised Shreveport-Barksdale interchange. Know all about that one, too. We trusted them on that one. So I've got a few questions.
And by the way, before David gets the rest of his questions out, I want to remind everybody that the Barksdale interchange over there by the racetrack, when is the ribbon cutting on that? Because we've talked about it before several times on the show and haven't really seen much progress on this whole gate. I mean, it's literally going to be an off-ramp, on-ramp that goes to, like, nowhere down there. So when's the ribbon cutting going to be on the new Barksdale Gate over there on the I-20 side where they've got the new interchange going? When's the ribbon cutting? Has anybody heard from Mike Johnson or any of our Congress critters about that? All right, here we go.
I hope are answered somewhere before this thing gets too far down the track. Let's start with security. Nobody's talked about it. You have a responsibility to provide what is assumed to be a secure environment for your citizens. How are you going to patrol it? Who's going to patrol it? Is it going to be one of these four entities, all of them, any of them, none of them? Who knows? Y'all going to work that out? We know how that goes. Last agreement we had with Shreveport, well, there was two of them. Barksdale Air Show was an agreement. They kind of quit that one. The Sports Commission, Mr. Williams, I was at a meeting, 15 years ago. $25,000 a year from four entities. Shreveport's not paid one dime in 15 years. So that's.
I got a question. And look, David, I'll just direct this to you because I know you're watching. If these other entities were supposed to participate in these other projects, was there no contract done to spell this out and who's responsible and who's cutting the check or, whatever for this and who's cutting the check for that? Was none of that ever done under contract? And why not? I mean, you're really going to trust other politicians? So that would be my question. Then I'm not just picking on you, but you were on the council, during some of these events. So maybe you can shed a little insight into that. All right, here we go.
That's how well those kind of a wink and nod things work. They don't work. And the citizens are going to expect it to be handled. And ultimately, you're the only people that are gonna have to step up and do it. So just understand it's way past trash bags.
All right, so I'm going to pause right there. Thank you, David, for answering. David says, well, of course, those three magic letters, MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. So it's the old fool me once deal, don't fool me twice, or whatever the whole saying is. Our good friend, and of course I have to add, former amigo, Shane Cheatham says, DOTD made a deal with the feds, don't tear down bridges, and we send federal money. Tear down bridges and feds money is out. State is wanting federal money, so it's not just state money, and more state money can be spent down south. Unfortunately, that makes perfect sense, Shane. Barry Butler has a good question. Whose relative owns the Unicorn Feed franchise? Because as somebody pointed out up there, yeah, Barry said, how much does it cost to feed those unicorns? Because, well, somebody's got to get paid to feed them. All right, but even more important than that, David's going to get into a couple of other really good questions here as well.
EMS response. Have a heart attack on top of the bridge. Who's going to respond to it? And what's the response time? Is there going to be a gate? Is there not going to be a gate? Is a fireman going to have to get out and lift a ballard? That's another question. Which side of the river responds to that? And what is the real time on that? Because you have an assumed responsibility for safety, okay?
All right. And that's a great point, David. One that honestly I didn't even consider is, yeah, who is responsible for that on the safety side of it? And, what are they going to do? Get up there and fight it out in the middle of the bridge to figure out who's taking the call? But that brings up another question. What is the current set of rules or protocols for, let's say it's a wreck or an accident, or, I don't know, God forbid somebody's trying to jump off the bridge or something like that. What's the current set of rules for response to that? How do they determine whether it's going to be Bossier Parish, Caddo Parish, and all that? How do they determine that now? Okay, here we go.
Now, let's assume a bunch of bad, misguided youth decide that's a good place to get in a fight. Who goes up to bust that thing up? How do you know about it? Same way you'd know about a mugging or a raping. I guess you just tell everybody time out, go to a call box, call them, say, hey, I'm being raped. Would you come on up here and go back and get raped? I mean, how does anybody know? If it's not patrolled like a street, a neighborhood, there are no neighbors, it's isolated, how does anybody know that somebody's in a bind? You just don't. And, it goes down, let's go to upkeep.
Well, before we go to upkeep, David, let's stop right there some more on the security, because I've got a couple of more questions. And again, I want to hear commentary from everybody, because I'm just throwing the questions out there tonight. Who is going to be responsible for the security? Because it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is going to be a linear state park, which means the state really should have the responsibility for the security overall, or at least, the primary security. So as an example, at most of the state parks, there are some sort of rangers there. Whether they're commissioned officers or not, I'm not really sure. And look, you've heard us gripe about the Cypress District up there. The Cypress District has their rent-a-cops up there, but the Cypress District also pays the local Bossier Parish Sheriff's Department $30 an hour with a 4-hour minimum to have sheriff's deputies there. And that's a whole other conversation, because in my opinion, they should be patrolling the park anyway. But, Robert Berry and all them up there, they spend the money with the sheriff's deputies as well as their own park ranger rent-a-cops. So, I guess as we get further along with this, with Nungezer's office or the tourism office, whoever's there, once this actually gets going, if it does, to determine how they're going to handle, park rangers and how they're going to handle law enforcement there. Because I didn't measure, but, the bridge is relatively long, so it's not like you're just having to cover a city block or two. So that's an interesting point. But anyway, let's move on and get back into upkeep questions.
These are all questions that they're saying, no, we'll get to that later. Okay, let's talk about upkeep. All right, per capita, once again, man, you split stuff across the river, expenses are all split 50-50. taxes are split per capita, you're going to get more than your fair share of this one, because Henry Whitehorn has already said Shreveport does not have this project in their budget. That statement was made at the port in a public meeting that Shreveport said they were out. They're being spoken for a lot, but they said they were out. Now, when all of a sudden, the people behind this at the state level, governor, a senator, a undersecretary of DOTD, a lieutenant governor, maybe, is behind it, I don't know. These people are going to be gone before this thing's ever even started. And then maybe about a generation or two from now, somebody's going to go, what were they thinking? Where do I come up with 15 or 20 million to tear this junk down? This isn't a linear bridge. It's a big old arch that nobody wants, and they want you to take it so you can get what's rightfully yours, which is rightfully needed, which is a proper 4-lane access across that river. Now, the craziest one's the elevators. I worked at Bossier Parish Community College for 12 years. We had 9 elevators. Not one day did all 9 work. Some days, 5 of them worked. And one thing I can tell you about them, they've got to be inspected. Somebody's got to sign a contract with an inspection service. And somebody has to sign a contract with somebody that's going to fix them in a timely manner. And if 2 of them go down, you're no longer ADA compliant, so then you have to shut down this arched mountain linear park thing. Has to be shut down. All these things have to happen, and somebody has got to be responsible, and you can't call a meeting with 4 entities and say, okay, what do we do?
Just thought of a solution: trolleys. So if you want to come up there to our bungee jumping operation after you've been through the jet ski rentals, then we need a trolley, David. It's really that simple. Little, I don't know, electric, or I guess they could be gas powered, or, whatever these days. But we just need a trolley system that runs up and down the bridge. Maybe even a little dual trolley deal, one on each lane that, well, of course, then you might accidentally run over people, and there's a whole other security issue. I don't know. Yeah, interesting problem. It is a pretty good hill. You're right, Terry. Just the more you think about it, it does get crazier and crazier. David Womack said, knock the bridge down and put up the and put a 4-lane bridge up there, and let's get on with it. I agree with that 100%. So here we go. We're almost through with this.
None of this has been answered. All right. In closing, I just want to tell you, there is a lot of questions. And the sad part about it is the state of Louisiana has set the timeline on this bridge for 30 years. For 30 years, they've set the timeline. And now they're setting the timeline that you got to do it right now. You need to get your bridge, but you don't need to do it right now. You need to do it under your terms. You need to say, if you're going to take Jimmy Davis back to brand new and give me a brand new 4-lane a 2-lane next to it, then there's my 4 lanes. Yeah, I mean, as long as everything's up to new, if they're going to say it's going to last forever, good, make it last forever and build a new one right next to it. But there's no reason you have to take this park that's also going to dip into your existing park and recreation money. So anything you spend on this linear park that's going to be used by, I'm sure, every bit of handful of people, it's still going to come out of your ball field and your other money.
Let's stop right there for a second. Shane, I knew if I pitched something out there that somebody would be able to come up with a great idea. So Shane Cheatham says, Sobo trolley services. Absolutely. Let's do it, Shane. You can drive the trolley. And Duke and I will do the bungee jumping, and David Johnson can handle the jet ski service down at the bottom on the water side of it. So see, we got this whole thing covered. And we'll have Lisa Friday Johnson up there. She'll be helping promote the bungee jumping, and the heck with Bubble Don. The heck with Bubble Don, because he doesn't want bungee jumping. So the heck with him. All right. But David Jones does bring up another good point is, some of this is going to have to come out of the existing budget money for parks and recreation. And, we've already had some controversy over the parks and recreation. And he brings up another good point. Let me jump ahead a few seconds here. Circling back to the security issues.
Somebody trip on a water bottle, fall and break their elbow on the concrete. You didn't pick up your trash. The state does not have a police department. They do not have an EMS department. They don't have anything, and they're saying all you're gonna have to do is pick up a little bit, few trash bags.
Well, David, I don't know if David Jones asked in the commentary, says, where was she today? Well, because you were up there speaking and not the most positive speech towards our linear park, I got to say, David, I'm a little upset. But, you know, Duke and I are really, really counting on the bungee jumping, and you're sitting there trying to throw water on our idea. But I guess she's probably was. You would think she would be there to counter some of your arguments, but maybe she had some other appointments or whatever. And David, you brought up one other really good last point. Let me, well, I'll tell you what. Let's jump to a question from Darby. So here we go.
Take your seat.
Yes, sir.
You once sat here and made decision for the citizens of Bossier. If you were sitting here now on this item, what would be your position?
Mr. Darby, I wouldn't say it's the wrong idea. I would have to prove to myself it's the right idea. And I do not trust the state of Louisiana or anybody other than the people I sat next to stick to their word. I would have to find out the answers to these things. I would not trust the state to say, just take it and we'll figure that out later. That never works. We'll figure it out later. What you'll figure out is you've got a hold of something you can't let go of. And you know, what is the rush all of a sudden? They weren't in a rush 30 years ago. Sitting there, yes, I would still pursue my bridge.
Well, I think part of it is, David, that a lot of people now are getting antsy because it's been ongoing and needed to be done for well, not necessarily the linear park, but the bridge issue is needed to be taken care of for the last 30 years, and people are getting antsy about it. And so we had a little bit more movement on it. And then, like you said, the money got yanked away and the stupid birds or vice versa. And well, now the linear park situation. But you bring up another good point right here in just a couple of seconds. So I want to get to this and then we'll start closing everything out.
But you know what? I would darn sure make sure it was under my terms, not you're going to take our garbage. Well, I mean, this sets a whole new precedent for the state in every parish. If you want your state money for your state stuff, you got to take our throwaways first.
Wow. All right. And so another good point is this setting a precedent for other state parks in the state. And how that's going to be handled in the future. All right, so there was a little more discussion on it from there. We'll kind of finish up here with another minute or so.
Sets a precedent. I have never seen anything like this, and I can tell you what, I've done a little bit of homework on a linear bridge. This is not a linear park. Linear parks are flat, abandoned, metro places that go through the middle of New York, and they use them into green spaces to walk between places they work, eat, and live. This is a mountain.
It is a pretty good hill.
If you want to see how many people cross a bridge, go find out how many walk across Texas Street Bridge. It goes from downtown Shreveport to Boardwalk. I have never seen more than maybe in my lifetime, maybe 5 people walk.
All right, so I'm going to stop it right there. And I agree with you on that, David. I had never seen that many people going across the Texas Street Bridge either. But, you know, in all fairness, up until recently, it was pretty darn dangerous and narrow walking across that bridge. Maybe more people will now, and especially, you know, Shane, this is another business idea. We could put a flak jacket service on the Bossier side so that people going to the Shreveport side, you know, could rent a flak jacket or something, bring it back unharmed, and, you know, get part of your money back or something like that. But I do want to thank David for getting up and speaking. You know, he's a former city councilman, so he pretty much knows, of course, everybody up there knows how things work. But these are the kinds of questions that people need to be asking when they get up there. And like Shane said, it was the best thing David said today. The state is holding the new bridge hostage over Bridge Park. And yeah, that is crazy. But these questions have to be asked, and hopefully this will cause some of the city councilmen to pause and think. Now, let me go ahead and let me switch screens here again, and we will get to the vote because they did vote on the memorandum of understanding. So give me just a second here, and I'll get that pulled up on the screen. All right, so here we go. Publish back to live. Hit the right buttons here. All right, so here was the voting results on that. Now, this is the ordinance to authorize the memorandum of understanding. So, according to Jacobs and all of that, this is not technically committing Bossier to anything. It's just committing Bossier to commit to something in the future, as much as I believe Jacobs, but that's pretty much correct. It's a memorandum of understanding between the state of Louisiana, the Louisiana DOTD, the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, the Police Jury, the Caddo Parish Commission, the City of Shreveport, and the City of Bossier City. And interestingly, there were 6 votes for and 1 vote against. Bubba Williams voted against the memorandum of understanding. Very, very interesting. And yeah, you're right, David. The state of Louisiana is not the most trustworthy business partner. Yeah, so we'll see how all this turns out. Okay, so let me double check my notes here. Oh, there is one other thing that I wanted to mention. Let me switch screens again here. How many of y'all remember all the controversy about Sportran in South Bossier? Remember all that controversy that was going on, and oh my goodness, it was going to be terrible for South Bossier. Oh no, we needed it for South Bossier. Chandler was on board with it, and then nope, he didn't remember any of that and didn't say anything about it. And then just magically and quietly, Sportran got their route in South Bossier. Well, according to Channel 3, an article 3 hours ago, South Bossier City Sportran route meeting expectations. The new route started on June the 13th. Serves as a resident of South Bossier for the first time. Most of the route going right along Barksdale Boulevard. Some of the stops include Brookshires Grocery Arena, Parkway High School, and Plantation Plaza. Sportran CEO Denero Washington says the new service is seeing passengers. South Bossier doing exactly what we thought it would do. The citizens are taking to the service. It's been highly used. We're seeing about 7 to 8 passengers an hour, which is actually very good for a service of that nature just starting up. And so Duke and I have threatened to take camera and go document doing a Sportran bus ride, but we've had better things to do, just haven't got around to it. But I did want to update everybody and let y'all know that the South Bossier Sportran route, bus route, is in full swing and serving 7 to 8 customers an hour, according to Denero Washington. All right, let's see. Let me run through the comments here real quick. Let's see. If you think Shane Cheatham says, I have some oceanfront property in Arizona, maybe some oceanfront property by the Jimmy Davis Bridge. If you think what the CEO of Sportran said is true, his name is Dinero. Isn't that like Spanish for money? Or is it dinero? No, I think that's right. Anyway, 7/8 people per hour, so averaging not even a full person an hour. We have partial people riding the bus. Why do you need here we go. Jessica Langley Maddox says, why do you need a city bus at a high school when there are school buses? Yeah, good point. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Holly Cole says, speaking of Bossier news, what happened with Bossier Now? Did y'all cover that? No, we kind of got in a kerfuffle. I don't know if you remember, Holly. We kind of got in a kerfuffle with Hal over there at Bossier Now because he was kind of manipulating some results just a wee little bit on his poll that he had, and we called him out on it on a show, and he took his toys and went home and literally said we were dead to him. I'm not kidding. Said we were dead to him. And so hadn't had any communication since then. I knew Bossier Now's website had gone offline and he was not doing the news. I don't know if somebody else has purchased it. In full disclosure, we have not. I did check the domain, but we have not purchased that, and don't have any plans to do hard news coverage like Bossier Now was doing. I mean, just doing our opinion stuff here takes up an inordinate amount of time. But anyway, thank you for asking. So I don't know. Maybe we'll dig into it a little more, see if we can find out. Let's see. Brandy Jones Faulting says, we need buses in Sobo like we need another dollar store chicken joint. Maybe they could do a combination dollar store chicken joint with a combination covered bus stop. How about that, Brandy? All right, folks. Well, that's pretty much, honestly, all I've got to talk about tonight. I think we've covered everything that I wanted to cover. I just wanted to give you all an update on that meeting because interesting information on the redistricting, and our good friend David Jones, former city councilman, did bring up some great points before the city council today on the Jimmy Davis Bridge, even though he did try to set us back a few steps on our bungee jumping. Still, they were good questions, so I guess we'll forgive you for that, David. All right, folks, I appreciate y'all watching. We went about an hour. We do plan to, of course, be here every Tuesday evening if it's at all possible. So far, we're at 112 shows, and I don't think we've missed a show. Actually, we've done more than 112 with the Louisiana Watch side and some of the other videos we've released, but I don't think we've missed one so far. We're trying to do this every week if possible. Hopefully, Duke will be doing better next week and be back in the game and back over there in the navigator's chair, because he does contribute a heck of a lot to the show as far as notes and looking things up and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully we'll have some guests in the future coming up that'll be pretty cool. And anyway, hey, we appreciate everybody watching. Hey, don't forget, if you got some information that you want to send to us, but you want to stay anonymous, go make you a free protonmail.com account. Don't put any identifying information in when you make the account. Send an email to Watch at Proton Mail. We do check those. As a matter of fact, I got about 6 or 7 of them. I don't know. It's the war between Shane McWilliams and Chris Estes is still being fought via Proton Mail. Here's a hint, folks. If you send us accusations of corruption, you need to send us more than just something saying, I think it's corrupt. Send us some details. We will dig, but we need some breadcrumbs to get started with. Some, decent sized breadcrumbs to get started with. We do read all those. And some of them we do act on, and sometimes it just takes a while to find out information. But anyway, so if you have some information, send it to us via Proton Mail. Don't forget, if you want to donate some coffee money to us or whatever, go to BowsierWatch.org or BowsierWatch.com. Doesn't matter. There's a donations button there. Click that. You can give us a little coffee money if you want. It does cost money to run the software and do the things that we do and all that. So we appreciate your help if you can. If not, hey, just watch the show, share it out, comment and tag, and that's good enough for us. That's literally why we do this. So I appreciate everybody watching. We will see y'all next week on another edition of Bossier Watch. Good night, folks.